Now, the rest of the story.
All right, welcome back to the rest of the story. And we're going to address a question that I guess a lot of people from, a non-agricultural background would probably be are generally curious about as to why. Oh, Brittany's here. Brittany, say hi to everybody.
Hi.
Wondering why we don't plant our corn that is already in our grain bins and save ourselves the hassle and the money of paying for that high-priced, expensive seed. Now, talking to one of those people that we write those expensive checks out to, Andrew. So,
Hey, Travis.
it's nice to see you too. All right, let's just go with that question. A lot of people are wondering why we as farmers, when we already have a grain bin full of corn seed, sitting out there, why don't we just take that and go ahead and just plant that and save ourselves the hassle of...
I think I know the answer, because it's illegal.
Really? Well, let's ask Andrew now.
Well, there are different legal things to consider when doing it. There's lots of talk about big bad Monsanto and how they're making themselves rich at the cost of farmers. There is a lot of cost in the seed corn, and there has been times when it gets pretty pricey. And that's why we take a look at the genetics that you buy and make sure that we're spending the money in the best way possible. We don't want you to spend $300 a bag on seed corn that's not going to give you every dollar back as a return. If you're spending big bucks, we want you to be able to get big yields from it. On the other hand, if you just planted, say, the non-GMO corn, which you can actually run out of a bin in some instances, there are different patents on it that keep it, somewhat illegal to run bin-run corn. But let's just talk about non-GMO corn. The way that pollinates and cross-pollinates on itself, you can have issues even with that.
Okay.
The biggest issue with GMO corn and running it from a bin is that a lot of times after the corn cross-pollinates with itself and gives you the new seed, it doesn't always carry the traits along with it. Mm-hmm. So you might not get the Roundup Ready trait, you might not get the corn borer or the rootworm trait, and then when you have that corn out in the field, you have the chance of it going down, or if you're spraying with Roundup, you might end up killing it if that trait doesn't get passed along through the whole breeding process.
And as far as planting the seed produced from the corn from a previous year, what could you actually potentially see as far as what your yields will actually do from doing that? I mean, are you going to still expect to see the same yields from the following year, or better, or worse, or what?
Typically, you're going to get worse, and it gets worse every generation you do that. So the first year that you run a bin run corn, it might not be terrible. You're going to have a few plants in there that don't look the same, or it's kind of, you're basically talking about inbreeding. There's a reason why people don't inbreed. Shouldn't inbreed your plants either. So you're going to get some mutants out there, and those aren't going to set much of a yield. So I don't have an exact number for you, Travis. I don't know if it's 40 bushel, if it's 100 bushel difference, but you get some pretty messed up plants out there. The longer you do it, the worse it's going to get.
Yeah. So you might get by with it that first year, but the longer you go, the more problems you're actually going to create.
Correct. Yeah.
Especially when it comes to like spraying or anything else like that. We're actually planning with the Roundup traits and everything, so you can actually go through and have the weed protection like we do.
Right. Now the other thing that we look at is what is the genetic potential of newer hybrids than you had with the older hybrids. So every year I was at a meeting with the UW, University of Wisconsin, and Joe Lauer is their corn agronomist. Really smart guy. I learn a lot from him every year. And he attributes about 2 bushel gain for every newer year of production of seed.
Okay.
So if you look at seed that was genetically developed about 5 years ago compared to seed today, that's a 10 bushel difference.
Yeah.
If you look at the hybrids that we have here, we just sorted these out today. There's 2 numbers that this is basically the first full year of production for them. They were out in plots last year. They were out in limited production last year. DeKalb has pretty high hopes for them. They see them as being the new replacement hybrids. 5835 is a big number that's replacing the 5808, 5806 line. Those have been really popular. Big lines, 108-day seed, high yield potential.
Yeah.
They figure this 5835 is going to out yield 5808, 5806, 9 years out of 10. Good plant health, just a pretty exciting hybrid for them. But we didn't put the whole farm to it because it is a newer number. We got to really see what it's going to do. About the time that we really figure that hybrid out, it'll be 3 or 4 years old, and we'll be testing new numbers out. So it's a very evolving process. Numbers change a lot, but we picked out a variety of hybrids. I think we have about 7 different numbers here. And,
yeah, I think at least.
Yep, and we fine-tuned them based off of the yield potential and the different soils on the different farms.
So as far as going off of every year there's always newer genetics, new hybrids that are coming out. As far as phasing out the older plants, we had a couple of numbers here not that long ago. I think it was right around the time you actually started coming around. We had a number that yielded really well the previous year, and then the first year we actually started working with you, it fell flat in its face.
Yep.
Now, with the newer hybrids, that's why we're kind of pushing for more of the newer plants on the farms as opposed to just sticking with a tried and true number that has yielded good once or twice. But like you said, the further you get away from a year where it did really well, just planting the same numbers 5, 6, 7 years down the road from that
gets more risky.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, all right. I think that is all we really needed for why we don't run seed out of the bin. I mean, it would be a nice idea in theory. I do know with like barley and the small grains, you can do it, but that's just probably why you don't. People are wondering that because I'm seeing on some other YouTube channels, they're starting to go out and clean their seed out, and us as farmers, we just can't do that. I do know, like you said, who did we talk to? A lady that if we would have raised or bought their soybean seed, we could have actually done exactly that for a short bit of time. We could have actually run soybean seed.
Yep, and corn is a hybrid plant. So corn is a different plant than what you're dealing with soybeans. Just the way that it's developed genetically.
Yeah.
That's why if you ever look at seed production fields, you'll see all the tassels cut on the female plants out there because they want to make sure that they're pollinating with pollen from the male plant to the female plants, and then they get the breeding process down to a T. So they're very picky about that, and it's primarily with corn. With soybeans, you don't have that same type of an issue. The biggest deal with soybeans is the patents on the traits, and you do have the Roundup Ready stuff that there's a possibility it won't carry over with soybeans, but if you're growing a non-GMO soybean, you really won't see the same issue with the inbreeding and things like that you would with corn.
Okay. I don't know what experiences you have with anybody actually planting, say, corn or beans straight from their bin. My dad he isn't down here right now, but Dad actually just told me a story here a couple weeks ago about a farmer back when he was growing up, that a farmer did exactly that he went and times were tough, and he had actually ended up planting all of his corn that year out of his grain bin.
Sure.
And I guess he got caught, and they said that he got in a lot of trouble, and Dad couldn't remember if he actually lost the farm over it or not, but from what he knew, that it was a very real potential.
Yeah.
I mean, are you seeing, as far as consequences that severe, do you think if we went and planted our whole farm instead of planting all of our seed we currently have now and just went and ran out of the grain bin out there, would you see the potential legal issues potentially costing the guy a farm or the farm?
Depends if you keep your mouth shut or not.
So what you're saying is YouTube probably isn't the best platform to be using for that.
I wouldn't be talking about it.
And for the record, no, we aren't ever going to do that.
Just look around.
Yeah, the corn's been here for a while. We went with Dairyland and AgriGold. Whoa. At least he didn't start. Yeah, he didn't start swearing at me, but we went with DeKalb and Dairyland, and we're really happy with the selections we went, the varieties, and the brand. The reason we aren't doing AgriGold is basically because of this guy. We stuck with him, and he's no longer handling AgriGold. But for our viewers that really aren't familiar with genetics and the brands and all that, can you explain why it isn't really hurting us that we're not just planting AgriGold?
Yeah.
DeKalb, we got a lot of yield potential.
And I got a lot of history with decal. When I was up north in the Arcadia, Wisconsin area, we sold a lot of decal out of there, and some of those numbers are still around today. So I'm very comfortable with decal. With AgriGold, AgriGold was very similar genetics to decal. They're both Monsanto brands, and AgriGold is probably one of the most competitive numbers when you come to high yields, next to decal. Look at different reports that are out there. I think FBN, Farmers Business Network, ran a report a couple of years ago showing that AgriGold actually had better yield than DeKalb in Illinois. They go back and forth. They're right, basically neck and neck with each other. They both are pretty expensive too when it comes to hybrids or different companies out there with corn hybrids. We've got some Dairyland seed. We started working with Dairyland seed a couple of years ago, and we're still planting some Dairyland seed. You had some excellent luck on some no-till with Dairyland last year.
Yep.
And so we've been talking about that. Now Dairyland and Mycogen are basically the same company. They're sisters to each other, but a lot of the genetics you'll see in a Mycogen bag, you'll see in a Dairyland seed bag as well. Okay. So I love working with AgriGold. I love working with DeKalb. I really don't have a preference between the two. They're both really good numbers, and being back with a company that has DeKalb, and the nice thing about the company I'm at is we're very competitively priced with DeKalb. So,
and we're not going to start talking about prices.
Yep.
But that is very true too with DeKalb and AgriGold. We did a split planter trial across several of our farms, and we were finding out that AgriGold and DeKalb ran very similar. There were some instances where AgriGold was beating out DeKalb by 10, 20 bushels, but there were some fields where DeKalb was beating out AgriGold in the same similar fashion. It really boils down to variety, soil type, weather. There's a lot of different factors that go into it. Yes, we do pay for the newer hybrids, but the reason is that we are chasing yield a little bit. I really don't like just planting what's been tried and true and just hope for the best. I like to actually, across all the seed we got right now, what would you say on a percentage base of our seed is actually newer seed that is relatively a year or two old? What are we at?
I'd say that 25% is numbers that are new between last year and this year. Mm-hmm. And then another probably 50% on top of that are numbers that are within 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
So there's only a couple numbers out here that are older than 4 years.
Yeah. Which I like to see. Mm-hmm. So I think that's all the questions we have for Andrew for today. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. If you guys have any more questions that we need to ask Andrew, make sure you let us know. Andrew is working on his channel. He's just starting to get back into, well, he actually bought the equipment, the proper equipment really, to start doing some of your own videos. So if you guys are interested in trying to keep up with Andrew a little bit, his channel name is...
It's WI Agronomist.
Short for Wisconsin Agronomist. So make sure you guys check his channel out. He is going to start trying to get some videos uploaded, but you got to remember, he's a busy guy just like the rest of us. So, all right, thanks for tuning in. Take care, take it easy, keep in touch. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.
Goodbye.